Are you a zero RB drafter, taking wide receivers early and often in your drafts? Are you unsure about which wide receivers will have an impact this year? Are you nervous about selecting a big name wide receiver who may bottom out? Well, then pull up a chair while we dive into which wide receivers to target and which to avoid tonight on the All Out Blitz. Let's get to it. I am your host, JJ Wenner, and I am joined by my shrewd co-host, Doug Orth. Doug, what are your thoughts on the wide receiver position this year?
Well, I'd say it's pretty much the same as it's been in recent years. We got a lot of good. We got some really good elite high-end wide receiver ones. We got a fair amount of what I would consider wide receiver 2 caliber candidates, and then we got a boatload of wide receiver 3s. So I'm sure as we go through the summer, we'll talk more about draft strategy and whatnot. But if you're not getting the elite wide receiver 1s, there's going to be plenty of wide receiver 2s and wide receiver 3s to indulge yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always amazing when you do rankings how many wide receivers fit into a 12 ranking range. And doesn't quite fit. But tonight we are going to be playing a game of smash or pass wide receiver edition. So what Doug and I are going to do is we're going to go through each round of ADP. So each set of 12 wide receivers, and we're going to tell you which of those 12 we would smash and which we would pass. But before we do that, a word from our sponsors. As you get ready for your drafts, everybody loves a good rookie guide, and our 2024 IDP Plus rookie guide is here. So get your rookie draft guide for a limited time for only $9.99. The latest version includes all of the post-draft feedback that you need to dominate your draft. So if you get a chance after the show, check out the link in the show description and download your copy today. All right, Doug.
Yes, sir.
I've been itching to get into this. I've had a lot of downtime with school being over. Way too much downtime, but I won't get into that. It's driving me a little bit crazy. So the first 12 receivers going off the board, according to Fantasy Pros Redraft ADP, are CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Puka Nacua, followed by A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake London, Chris Olave, and Devontae Adams. That's a great bunch of receivers, Doug.
Yes, sir.
Out of those 12, who are you smashing at their ADP?
Well, you just said it. Got a lot of great receivers there. I'm going with one guy that we loved last year. Unfortunately, had some unfortunate things happen to him. It's probably safe to say that we've seen Garrett Wilson's floor over his first 2 seasons. With Zach Wilson, Trevor Siemian, Tim Boyle, Joe Flacco, Mike White, and Chris Streveler accounting for most of the throws in his direction, Wilson has somehow still averaged 89 catches for 1,073 yards. What does that tell me, JJ? He gets open a lot.
It's true.
To keep the conversation somewhat relevant, I reviewed Aaron Rodgers' last 4 full seasons with the Packers and Devontae Adams. In Adams' last 4 seasons before the trade to Vegas, Adams' lowest target share was 23%. In the other 3 years, it was 27 to 29%. That information is secondary to what I'm about to tell you. Adams' lowest catch rate in that time was 65%, but was higher than 72% every other year. Through his first 2 seasons, Wilson's catch rate has not been higher than 56.5%. Even if we wanted to go further back than the last 5 years of their time together, Adams and Rodgers, Jordy Nelson had a long stretch of being a target hog with an abnormal catch rate. For the sake of showing everyone what Wilson's upside is, let's assume 153 targets, which is an average of 9 per game. Sounds like a lot, which is an average of 9 per game, but 15 fewer targets than he had last year. And a yards per catch average of 12.1, which is his career mark. Let's also assume a catch rate of 65%, which was the lowest mark of Adams' final run with Rodgers. Last but not least, Adams averaged 14 touchdown catches over his last 4 seasons with Rodgers. Now, I don't want to project Wilson for that, but I think 8 is a reasonable floor to account for the possibility Rodgers may miss time or see a slight slip in his ability. Wilson's final projected line with all that I just said would be 99 catches for 1,203 yards and 8 touchdowns. That's essentially what Jamar Chase did last year. And I think I established what I was setting was Wilson's floor when I began this example. I think 120 catches, 1,500 yards, and 10-plus touchdowns are all well within reach for Wilson if Rodgers stays healthy and is roughly the same quarterback we remember him being. What do you think about Wilson, JJ?
Well, as a Jets fan, I am over the moon about Garrett Wilson. I become so protective of our vital assets that I get scared of saying good things because, I don't know, we get punished as Jets fans a lot. So, but Garrett Wilson is an amazing player, and he's done amazing things with crap throwing him the ball. It's not like he's dropping the ball. That's not why his catch rate is low. It's because his passes are terrible. The quarterbacks have been terrible. I mean, embarrassingly bad. So even if Aaron Rodgers has his worst season ever, it'll be heads and tails above anything we've seen Garrett Wilson have. So I'm looking forward to this season, which, I mean, I probably shouldn't have said that out loud, but I don't know.
Yeah. But I read off the quarterbacks up there. What was it? 7 of them. And I think Joe Flacco is probably easily the best of the bunch. And
yeah. I mean, he had some success with Mike White, but of course,
you're right.
Mike White's Mike White.
So, yeah, I think knock on wood, you hear me knocking on wood too. This is a year that I think being a Jets fan is going to be worth it's not, nothing's going to make up for the last 50 years. Don't get me wrong about that. But
hey, we had a couple good runs under Rex Ryan. Let's go. It wasn't
Sean Green.
Hey, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, baby. 4 yards in 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust.
All right, JJ, who's your smash?
Well, since you took my beloved Garrett Wilson, I'm all in on A.J. Brown this year. He was wide receiver 5 last year on a team that, I mean, truly fell apart as the season progressed. The offensive system was pure garbage last year. One of my favorite Twitter accounts to follow is Honest NFL, which does a great job of showing plays and talking about all the different options. And they did a lot of work on what the Eagles were doing and dissecting their offensive scheme. And I do mean offensive when it came to what they were doing last year. They had 0 answers. They had no imagination. They couldn't handle blitzes. Now, whether that was Brian Johnson's fault or Nick Sirianni's, it's one of their two, something had to change. Now, Kellen Moore is going to come over from a 1-year stay with the Chargers after a 4-year run as the Cowboys OC. To say that this is an upgrade is an understatement. Now, I'm not sure about how much of an upgrade, right? People have different opinions when it comes to Kellen Moore, but literally anything is better than what they had last year. I'm looking forward to seeing what Hurts can do in a new system. And in turn, what is that going to do for A.J. Brown? So I think like A.J. Brown, his floor is wide receiver 7. And I think he's going to do some great things this year. What are your thoughts on A.J. Brown, Doug?
Yeah, I think he hit it pretty good. And I was doing some research here in the last week or two. Basically, the accounts that I was reading basically highlighted the same things: the inability to handle the blitz in Philadelphia last year, which it seems almost beyond belief when you have that good of an offensive line. But when you lack imagination with your scheme, you're not moving your guys, putting your guys in motion, that kind of stuff. If you don't have imagination, you got to have imagination with the offensive line, just with you do with the scheme too. And if those things, if you're not accounting for, something different every week, which apparently they weren't, you can have all the talent in the world and it's not going to matter. So I think A.J. Brown is solidly a wide receiver 1. I don't think that's news to anybody. I might disagree a little bit with the floor, but we're talking maybe wide receiver 10 instead of wide receiver 7. So, I mean, still.
I may have been a little hyperbolic on that one, but
yeah. I think if you make a selection for Brown, you can lock him in for a wide receiver 1 production. It doesn't, and that's what you're hoping for when you draft a guy in the he's probably going mid-second, so early mid-second.
Actually, looking at these ADP, Doug, he's going as wide receiver 7 and his ADP is 10. I was shocked looking at the overall ADP right now at how many wide receivers are being drafted early. It's almost all wide receivers in one QB ADP.
Yeah.
I mean, because here, Devontae Adams is number 12 in a wide receiver, and he's going at pick 17.
Yeah, that's a guy that caught 100 balls last year. So I know he had a disappointing. It was disappointing in terms of consistency, but still, I could have just looked at the graphic there, but 10 is hard for me to believe. But I still think he would probably pay off at that. I just think you're drafting him at a ceiling at that point. But that's another discussion for another time.
Well, Doug, out of this group of 12, this dirty dozen, who are you passing on in this group?
I think we can make a strong argument for each of the 12 receivers listed here. We said that at the beginning. But the one I have the hardest time making an upside case for is Chris Olave. I'm going to ask you, JJ, what is different this year? Michael Thomas's departure? No. Thomas has barely played since Olave's been there. Has the offensive line improved? Maybe. But the improvement is going to have to come from a rookie left tackle in Tali Fuaga and a converted right tackle in Trevor Penning, who we've heard good things in offseason work about, but it's still a conversion. The Saints lost their rock at right tackle and Ryan Ramczyk, and their depth is questionable at best. Has the quarterback play improved? Again, maybe, but I mean, it's the same as last year. Olave started to catch fire a little bit in the second half of the season once Derek Carr got healthier, but at least half of his big games over that stretch came against poor defenses or poor secondaries. If you could guarantee me that the offensive line plays like a top 16 unit, which I don't believe it will, then I would be willing to project another bump in production for Olave, who's done nothing but he built on his rookie year with a even better second year. Unfortunately, I think his average depth of target will likely need to come down again as New Orleans struggles to protect Carr, which will likely limit Olave's ability to score touchdowns. While a repeat of last year's production, 87 catches, 1,123 yards, and 5 touchdowns, is a solid season, I don't think there's a strong case that can be made he could do much better than that given the current environment. Fantasy managers really need their wide receiver ones to score more than 5 or 6 touchdowns, and I'm afraid that is about what Olave will finish with. What thoughts do you have on Olave, JJ?
I think you said it all. It's just an uncertain situation. He doesn't have a top flight QB, which is going to sort of limit his options. There's really no other receiving threats there. I don't know what else they have besides Taysom Hill that's going to keep defenses honest. So I don't know. Again, as a dynasty player, like dynasty wise, Olave's fine, but it almost reminds me of Terry McLaurin, where we're always like, he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
Great example.
They never are quite what we want them to be. So unfortunately, I think he's just in the wrong situation. Let's see what happens in the next couple of years and see if they can turn around. But I can definitely see avoiding him at this cost.
So who do you got for a pass of the wide receiver ones, supposed wide receiver ones?
Well, I struggled with who to avoid out of these 12. Outside of rookie Marvin Harrison, they're all great players who had amazing seasons in their career. But someone out of this group needs to be questioned. And for me, the choice is Jamar Chase. Now, I'm not saying I don't love Jamar Chase. I do. I love him very much. His upside is wide receiver 1 overall, right? He can be amazing, but I wonder what his floor is. Looking at the first 11 weeks last year when he had Joe Burrow, he scored less than 10 points in 6 different games. In that same span, CD had 3 games under 10. Tyreek had 2. Jefferson had 1 game under 10 in the 5 games before his injury. Sun God had 1. I can't have my top draft pick not scoring. If you want Jamar Chase, his ADP is 4 overall. And if he's not scoring you double-digit points nearly every week, that's not very helpful to you.
Yeah.
So for that reason, and that reason alone, I'd rather take the wide receivers around him at that same ADP. What are your thoughts on Chase?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't realize it was that bad, or at least that bumpy for Chase. That you make a very compelling case there. And I think you said it, his ceiling is wide receiver 1 overall. But we saw that floor, and you can make a case that T. Higgins is not a happy camper this year, and maybe Tyler Boyd was not exactly drawing a bunch of defensive attention, but you can make a case that it's going to be Chase and some either disgruntled guys or some young guys, and it's going to be on him to be the target hog. Which again, he can handle that responsibility, but I'm not sure that that's what you want. I mean, not every receiver is going to thrive and get 15 targets a week just because he played his college ball with his quarterback. I mean, the defense is on scholarship too. So you make a very compelling case. I'm gonna have to do a little more thinking on Chase now. But
all right. Well, let's take a look at the next 12. We're done with the next group. A little more interesting, a little more to talk about. But we have Brandon Ayuk, Nico Collins, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle, Mike Evans, and Devonta Smith, followed by Malik Nabers, DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs, Cooper Kupp, DK Metcalf, and Michael Pittman Jr. Out of that group, Doug, who are you smashing?
There are some very obvious smash candidates in this group, but I like to mix things up, JJ, from time to time. I will not go chapter and verse on Cooper Kupp, but I think he easily beats wide receiver 22 if he plays at least 15 games.
Okay.
Most of the people watching already understand he is older, 31 years old later this week, and he's been injured a lot over the last 2 seasons. I get it. With that said, Kupp's 17-game pace during a season in which head coach Sean McVay recently admitted his receiver was never healthy was 83 catches for 1,044 yards and 7 touchdowns. Those projections, you'll like this one, JJ. Those projections included a 6-game stretch in which he totaled 18 catches for 166 yards and a touchdown. In his other 6 games, he had 41 catches for 571 yards and 4 scores. While I think it's safe to say that Kupp will never again come close to his magical 2021 season, he is still Matthew Stafford's most trusted weapon and security blanket, in my opinion. Maybe it's unrealistic to expect him to stay healthy for a full season anymore, but I think he still has 100 catch and 10 touchdown upside, even if he's only on equal footing as Puka Nacua. You have some thoughts on Kupp there, JJ?
Once again, I tend to like older receivers just for their experience, and we know what they are. And a healthy Kupp is a hell of a receiver. And the offense is built to highlight what he does best. He has a young guy, Puka Nacua, who can help take some pressure off of him. He doesn't have to be the guy, right? I don't know if it's Batman and Robin, but it's definitely like Batman and Batman 2. I don't know. I'm terrible at superheroes.
Wait, Val Kilmer Batman and George Clooney Batman?
Those are 2 good Batmans. Those are 2 good. I might go Christian Bale and Robert Pattinson for the younger crowd, but he doesn't have to carry everything anymore.
You're right.
And they have a good running back in Kyren Williams. They, Blake Corum's there. They have a great head coach. I think they're going to be fine on offense this year. And I agree with you. I think Kupp can definitely rise above the wide receiver 22 ranking.
And I'll say this. I'll add this to the discussion here real quick before I move on to your smash wide receiver 2. I saw something yesterday which I thought was interesting, where it detailed that Kupp's yards per route run, and then there was another metric. Well, the topic was motion. Oh boy, where I'm trying to go with this here. So, pre-snap motion intended to where he was like the first read on that motion, and that accounted for an abnormal amount of his production last year, and then along with his yards per route run coming down significantly last year, the case was being made that, okay, this is somebody you want to avoid. And I'm going to tell you that I gave you the information here. Six games he was a wide receiver 1, and 6 games he was less than. I don't think it's just as easy as to say that he was more injured in those 6 poor games, and he was uninjured in the other 6 games. But I don't think it's as easy as just saying that, oh, well, his yards per route run has come down 3 straight years, therefore he's a declining receiver. You laid it out when I asked you about it. I think he's in a perfect offense for his skill set.
Yeah.
And as long as he stays healthy, and by all accounts he's healthy right now, I think he smashes wide receiver 22.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, who's your pass? Who's your smash?
Well, this was a very difficult group for me to pick a smash, but I want to talk about this, right? I want to go behind, like, inside the mind of a madman today. So Ayuk's, if we're looking at these guys, right?
Yes, sir.
Ayuk's ADP is higher than his best finish ever. So I'm not interested. We have Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. Dell's actually right in the next group we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
that's too many mouths for me to feel comfortable. Nabers is a rookie. DJ Moore has more competition in Chicago and a rookie QB. DK is not a big PPR guy, better in standard. Few catches for a lot of yards. Pittman, will he receive as many targets as he did last year? Is Richardson as good of a passer as Minshew? I don't think so. He might be a better player, but I don't know if he's a better passer. So for me, that left, after you picked, Deebo, Devonta Smith, or Mike Evans. I just went with A.J. Brown, so I couldn't go back-to-back Eagles, despite living in Pennsylvania. So I decided I'm going with Mr. Steady, Mike Evans. Now, he is going as the wide receiver 17. He has finished as the wide receiver 17 or lower twice in his career, in 2017 and 2015. Both of those are before I even became a teacher. That's a long time ago. So he's actually been in the top 10, 5 of the past 6 seasons, including last year when he was the wide receiver 4. I don't know when the cliff is going to come. We never know. But I don't think it is this year. He has Mayfield and Godwin back. They added a wide receiver 3 and a receiving back, but that's not going to take away what Evans does best, and that's catch TDs.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield trusts him to get open, and he threw him 30 jump balls last year, which Evans brought down at a 53.3% clip, which was good for 6th in the NFL. So I trust him to be at least a high-end wide receiver 2, if not a back-end wide receiver 1 this year. What do you think about Mike Evans?
Almost in complete agreement with you. It's okay. I think last year is probably his ceiling now in that offense. I don't like this transition from Dave Canales to Liam Cohen, but I've heard enough of the right things from Liam Cohen to believe that it's not going to be a huge drop off for Evans. I think we're going to be talking more Chris Godwin, and I don't mean Chris Godwin over Mike Evans. I think we're going to be talking more about Chris Godwin being a thing again this year, moving back to the slot, or at least playing more often in the slot. But you can't argue Mike Evans' consistency, and you laid it out beautifully. And so it's nice when you can draft a guy Just like you said, he has finished as the wide receiver 17 or lower twice in his career, and you're telling me that that's where I can get him. I like that.
Yeah, I like that as well. So what don't you like? Who are you passing on in this tier?
I understand the appeal of Deebo Samuel. I've had him a time or two in my teams. He has a versatile skill set, and he doesn't need his coach to drop too many plays to get him going because he does so much after the catch. He plays in a high-scoring offense with Kyle Shanahan calling the shots. He undoubtedly has the upside of being a player drafted as the wide receiver 15. Here are some of my problems with taking him that high. Outside of one season in which Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse and Christian McCaffrey was still in Carolina, Samuel has not finished with more than 60 receptions in any season except for that one. His rushing volume has dipped in each of the last 2 years, especially with McCaffrey becoming more of the centerpiece of the offense. Samuel's also a good bet to miss a few games every year because he plays with so much physicality. And how much longer do we want to pencil him in for one rushing touchdown every 5 or 6 carries? Go look it up. It's almost every 5 or 6 carries. Let us also not forget that San Francisco drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round this spring. One of the primary reasons why he was drafted was to give the 49ers another route runner in the Ayuk mold who could get open against man coverage. Now, while it would not surprise me if Pearsall doesn't see a lot of action this season, Deebo's not the kind of player who can afford to lose targets because he relies so much on efficiency.
Yep.
I'll give you one other thing to consider. Since Samuel is so much like a running back playing receiver, would it not make sense to hold him to the same standard we do running backs? What do I mean by that? I think it is reasonable to just suggest he might be subject to the same kind of age cliff as running backs. He's 28 and will turn 29 during the NFL playoffs. What do you think about Samuel, JJ?
I've never been a big Deebo Samuel fan. Just not a fan of his. And I agree with you. This is sort of the Taysom Hill argument, but extrapolated to a huge, right? To a star player.
Yeah.
Does he get enough targets and receptions to be a great wide receiver? I don't know. Early, like this is his ADP's 22. So he's going at the back end of the second round.
Yeah.
That's early. And I don't know. If you're counting on the rushing floor, Mr. Madden is like, Madden cover now is there. CMC, he's going to get his carries. I mean, I know they're going to scheme him up in many different ways. Hell, maybe he's going to get a lot of return yards. Maybe they're going to use him in that, trying to, capitalize on the new rules. But Deebo's always been somebody who I've avoided. I would much rather take Ayuk at 13 than Deebo at 15.
Fair. JJ, which wide receiver 2 are you passing on?
Now, I want to be very clear. I wish I could flash this on the screen. This is a redraft take, a pure redraft take. And I don't like my take.
So what JJ is saying is that he doesn't like this guy. Go ahead.
I love this guy. I'm avoiding Malik Nabers in redraft, especially at the top of the third round. Now, if you are a believer in vacated targets, the Giants have watched Barkley leave and Waller retire, leaving a bunch of targets for somebody. But do you trust Daniel Jones? He was outright terrible last year. Terrible. And in the past 5 years, nobody on the team has surpassed 100 targets. Now, granted, they haven't had many good wide receivers in the past 5 years, but only 2 got over 90, and that was in 2020. So will Nabers get 100 plus targets? He should. I don't know who else they're going to pass to. But I have a hard time spending a third round pick on a rookie in a terrible offense with a terrible QB. Even if Daniel Jones gets hurt, are you counting on Locke to do much better? Last year, I would have trusted Tyrod Taylor to come in and maybe do something better with Malik. But he's gone and it's Drew Lock. So this is a putrid offense that even in their breakout year only passed 520 times. I believe in Nabers. I believe he's going to be a great player. I have drafted him in multiple rookie drafts. I just can't do it in redraft at this cost. Doug, your thoughts on Malik Nabers?
I've read some wisdom on the X, and I can't believe I'm actually saying that phrase. I've read some wisdom on the X, but what is the saying? Don't hate the player, hate the ADP, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a perfect. He's a perfect example here. I love the player. Mm-hmm. I think I high-end comped him to a CD Lamb, if I remember right, in my draft profiles. Love the player, and I think the offensive line is going to be better this year in New York. God knows the offense can't be any worse. One would hope it anyway. It can't be any worse. But we're just looking at the screen here. Do I trust him? I mean, I'm going to take Kupp over him just because better offense, and I have reason to believe in him. I don't know how much further I move him down, but I have more of a problem. I don't have a problem with wide receiver 19. I have more of a problem with ADP 26.
Yeah.
Let's get him in the fourth round. Then we're talking. I don't need to take that guy at 3.2, 3.3. I need him as my receiver 2 with a solid start. I don't need him as my wide receiver 1 after a running back start type of thing. So yeah, that's a bridge too far for me.
All right. Well, Doug, those were both of our passes, and it is time to hear from our sponsors. Now, I spy behind you that championship belt. Now, I've never been in a league that has a championship belt. Now, I'm assuming, based on how that looks and how nice it looks, that is a Trophy Smack belt?
It is the Trophy Smack.
So tell me about this belt. Is it hefty? What does it feel like?
Well, I knew I had to get into the gym after I lifted the belt. I had to get in the gym to proudly put it over my head. That's how heavy that thing is. No, it's a beautiful belt. It is a beautiful belt, and there's a reason that I have it prominently placed here is because it's a very beautiful belt. So
I love seeing those belts. I love seeing you guys carry them around the Kings Classic. I love seeing the advertisement. You know, fantasy football should be special. Make your league special. Go to Trophy Smack. And if you're having a live draft, like even better, you can get there, get the belt, get their gorgeous draft boards filled with every player sticker you could possibly need. They even have the IDP stuff for us degenerates, right? You don't have to scribble names on a blank sticker. So just go to Trophy Smack, get the only draft board, get all the rewards, get the shame for the people who lose, right? Get everything you need for your league and make your league special. Special leagues last. And if you want your league to last, invest. So check out the link in the show notes below and get yours today. All right, Doug.
That sounds good. Yeah, by the way, yeah. I need another belt for my collection, so let's go.
Well, start listening to the All Out Blitz, and maybe you'll win another one, my friend.
Yes, sir.
All right. The next 12 wide receivers, according to Fantasy Pros Redraft ADP, are Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, George Pickens, Christian Kirk, Amari Cooper, and T. Higgins, followed by Terry McLaurin, Keenan Allen, Hollywood Brown, Jayden Reed, Calvin Ridley, and Chris Godwin. Who are you smashing at this round?
So I think you said it for the wide receiver 2 group. This was probably this group here. There's probably 5 to 6 names I could easily make a case for as wide receiver 2s. So I love this group in terms as far as getting them as a potential wide receiver 3. However, I'm not a stan of anybody. This is probably hopefully the only time you're going to hear me use the term stan, but I am a Calvin Ridley fan. So having said that, last season's finishes tend to set the following season's ADP to some degree, but they rarely tell the story of the player's season. Take Ridley, for example. He was the wide receiver 19 in total fantasy points, but only the wide receiver 26 in points per contest. That's among receivers who played at least 10 games. The thing is, neither one of those things encapsulate his season, though. He scored fewer than 10 points, 10 fantasy points, PPR fantasy points in 9 games. That means he was a disappointment as a wide receiver 3 in more than half of his games last season. So why is he a smash going from Trevor Lawrence to Will Levis? Well, while 2023 was disappointing in terms of consistency, what does it say about a player who played only 5 games in the previous 2 years and still topped 1,000 yards despite being misused? Okay, now I'm going to start with that last statement, the part being about being misused. I'm going to start with that and work my way back.
Sounds like the start of a blues song, which is perfect for Nashville.
JJ, put on your head coaching or your offensive coordinator cap now.
All right.
What do you do with the 6'1" receiver, a 6'1", 190-pound receiver who relies heavily on quickness and shortcuts to get open?
What do I do with him?
Yes.
I put him in the slot and have him use his quickness to get open quickly.
Wow. I said line him up off the line of scrimmage and let him play in space, which is essentially what you said. What did Jacksonville do, JJ? I'll save you that was a rhetorical question. Ask him to. What did Jacksonville do? They asked him to serve as the X receiver, where he is forced to beat pressed and used him on sideline routes. Now, there's reason. Admittedly, the Jaguars didn't have much of a choice once Zay Jones got hurt early in the season because Ridley was the only other receiver on the team capable of being the X. But my problem is it should not take an offense coordinator. I'm talking to you, Press Taylor. It should not take an offense coordinator most of the season to figure out how to get his best perimeter receiver open. Believe it or not, the Titans are in a great position to optimize Ridley in 2024. DeAndre Hopkins is one of the better X receivers of his generation, even at his age, in part because he thrives against physical coverage and in contested catch situations. Tyler Boyd is a highly underrated slot receiver, but not exactly a huge threat to either Ridley or Hopkins' target share. He probably makes their job easier when he's on the field because he demands respect. I'm talking about Boyd there. Much as the case was with Ridley in Atlanta opposite Julio Jones, Ridley should serve as the flanker, which will allow him to take advantage of that quickness that we both talked about while trying to avoid press off the line of scrimmage. How do we know this will likely happen? Because new head coach Brian Callahan told us he envisions Ridley playing the same kind of role Jamar Chase did for him in Cincinnati. And Callahan and Zach Taylor did a great job of getting using Chase out of the slot, getting him somewhat in motion in recent years. So the last part of that puzzle may be the trickiest. If JJ ends up being right from our show 2 weeks ago, and Will Levis is a bum, then this could be another frustrating year for Ridley. But if Levis's biggest issues were play calling, supporting cast, and playing behind arguably the league's worst offensive line last year, then Levis should have a chance. And if Levis is able to get comfortable behind Tennessee's new and improved offensive line, and you'll see in my offensive line analysis that I'm teasing now, and I'll talk about a little bit later. That offensive line should be significantly improved, and you go read the article if you wonder why. But if that new and improved offensive line is in fact new and improved, then Hopkins, Ridley, and Boyd are going to make Levis's job that much easier. And if Levis's job is that much easier, then you would hope, in theory, Hopkins and Ridley are going to benefit the most. What do you think about Calvin Ridley?
Well, if I'm being quite honest, I have had a long-standing negative view of Calvin Ridley. But mainly because I always think Calvin Ridley is a wide receiver 2 and not a wide receiver 1. And I feel like even when he was with the Falcons, I felt analysts were always trying to tell me that he's a wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
He was just waiting for Julio to leave, and then he was going to ascend to the throne. I don't quite buy it. And I'm a little bit nervous. I know this might be a little bit off topic. What happened to Calvin Ridley last year where they were taking a bunch of slot receivers and pushing them outside and hoping they could get open? Sounds a lot like the Bills this year, which is why we haven't seen any Bills receivers up to this point. I'm a little bit nervous because that's what they seem to be doing. Back to Ridley. I think this is a good opportunity for him. I think this is a good opportunity for him to slide into that Robin role. There I am doing Superman again, right? Like I don't know, like Kevin Durant in basketball. Kevin Durant is never going to be an alpha. I don't care what anybody says. He can't win on his own. He couldn't. He just goes from leader to leader to leader, and he plays wonderfully. But whenever he has to be the leader, it kind of falls apart a little bit.
Yeah.
I think Ridley's much the same way. And he's going to have D-Hop there, who's going to gladly take that leadership role and let Ridley do what Ridley's going to do.
And I think you said it wonderfully. And I think I probably left this out. I know I left this out of my explanation. I think Ridley is best as I don't want to say 1A, 1B, because I think he's at least on equal footing as Hopkins, but he needs to have, he's not a 1 or a 2. I think he's in that middle ground. You know what they say in baseball, like he's not a AAA guy. He's not a major leaguer. He's a 4A guy. He's not an alpha, but he's not a wide receiver too.
Yep.
That's the way it is. So having somebody he can play off of like Hopkins, I think is going to be just like it was in Atlanta with Julio Jones. Now, I'm not saying that prime Julio Jones or close to prime Julio Jones and aging DeAndre Hopkins is the same guy. I'm not saying that, but it's going to be his best situation to produce since then, I think. So yeah, I like it. I like what you said there. So I talked about my pass at wide receiver 3. My smash at wide receiver 3. Who's your smash at wide receiver 3?
You know, I'm starting to become repetitive, but this is another one of my old guy picks. I'm going to go with Keenan Allen.
Yes.
Once again, he's on a new team. Yes, he has a rookie QB. Rookie QBs still have to throw the ball. Over the past 7 seasons, he's finished in the top 20 every year except 2022 when he only played 10 games. So why would that change this year? Shane Waldron is the Bears' new OC. He does not shower one receiver with all the targets. In his 3 years with Seattle, the top wide receivers averaged 130. Wide receiver 2 was 114. So they're neck and neck. So I don't think he's going to get the 150 targets he saw, right, in LA.
And that was 13 games. But yeah, go ahead. Yes.
Exactly. He's not going to get that. But he's definitely going to get enough to beat a wide receiver 32 ADP. I mean, he showed enough last year that we know he's not washed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so for me, I think out of all these guys, he's easily going to beat his ADP. And if he doesn't, I mean, I don't know. Would you be surprised if Keenan Allen ends up a wide receiver 2 this year?
No. And I'll tell you what, if I wasn't blinded by my love for Ridley, Allen would have been my pick here. Wide receiver 2, I think, is almost a given for him. And I'll take you one step further. I think it's possible he could crack the top 12. I think that's possible. I think it's possible with Ridley too, but that's not. I think the only thing that's going to hold Allen back from smashing what we're talking wide receiver 32 ADP pick 54. I think the only thing that's going to keep him from is injury, and we're talking like a significant injury, like more than the 4 games that he missed last year. Maybe, if he misses 6 or 8, because what he did, it's amazing what he did in 13 games last year. I know Caleb. We can't say Caleb Williams and Justin Herbert are the same in the offense. We can't say the offense is the same, situation the same, but I think let's say he's the wide receiver 1 there in Chicago. Let's just say, and let's use your example of 130 targets. What do you think Keenan Allen's going to do with 130 targets, JJ?
I would say close to 100 receptions for 1,200 yards and 7 TDs.
Yeah. Sounds like a damn good wide receiver to me.
Keenan's going to Keenan.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that what they do? I mean, Keenan's been on SNL for like 32 years, and Keenan Allen's been in the NFL for, it seems like, 20 years. And they just keep delivering and delivering and delivering.
Amen.
What's
to
up
that.
with that?
What is
Are you an SNL fan?
Oh, heck yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
JJ, we'll have to talk about that. But yeah, I record the best skits, or at least what I think of the best skits. I've been doing that for 15, maybe 20 years now. Yeah, I'm a big SNL guy. Yep.
Favorite skit of the past 15 years? Do you have one?
Yes. My favorite one was when they asked Natalie Portman to rap.
Both versions.
Oh,
Both versions. Even when she came back, I love Natalie Portman.
Can
you believe her husband cheated on her? What a fucking idiot. Oh, sorry, I don't curse. What an idiot. God, I love Natalie Portman.
I know. No, that's past. That was 18 years ago when the one I'm talking about, 2006. That I'll tell you, I was working at ESPN. I was working at ESPN at the time, and so I recorded it back then. I still had VHS, but I recorded it on my VHS or on my VCR. And so I get back home from ESPN around, I don't know, 1:30, 2 a.m. or whatever it is. And I'm thinking, okay, this is an interesting beginning. And then within like the first 30 seconds of that, she's dropping swear words and
yeah.
Without question. That's almost always the one clip that comes to my mind whenever I think of great SNL clips in this century, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great one. Oh my word. I think we might do a whole pod just on SNL. All right. So my favorite is the Rock sketch where it's the evil inventors and they have to come up with the most evil invention. And he comes up with a child molesting robot. And when they ask, how do you make one? It is the funniest skit I've seen in like that skit makes me laugh harder than most skits. Like, I don't know. Anyway, so in this tier, back on track, who are you passing on?
Well, as I said a few minutes ago, this one's tough because I'm not sure there's a receiver in this group I don't like. However, if there is one receiver in this group who could be his team's wide receiver 1 or the number 3 option on any given day, that man for me is Jayden Reed. There were points last season where any one of Romeo Doubs, Reed, Dontayvion Wicks, and Christian Watson could claim he was the Packers' top wideout. Watson is arguably the most gifted of the bunch and maybe the best fit for Jordan Love's game. Doubs may have the best chemistry with Love, as we saw during last September and again in the playoffs. Wicks became a trusted red zone target, and if you want to believe in some hyperbole, I believe it was Matt LaFleur that loosely compared Dontayvion Wicks' ability to get off the line of scrimmage, some of his quickness to Davante Adams. So when you're looking at that 4 receiver group, you're going to leave somebody with that has that kind of footwork and that ability to get off the line of scrimmage. You're going to leave him. You're going to just let him play 20 snaps and call it good? Probably not. Anyway, Reed may have the best all-purpose skill set of the bunch, but I feel pretty confident in everything I just said about his teammates a few seconds ago. Let's pretend for a minute that Watson has found the answer to his reoccurring hamstring problems. Will he not demand 100 targets? Doubs was the only Packer to attract at least 10 targets in a game twice last year. Is he not a big piece of the puzzle? Late last season, like I just said, LaFleur loosely compared Wicks' short area quickness to Adams. LaFleur even admitted recently that while he feels good about his receiver room, it's going to be hard to give any of those guys as many touches as he'd like. Long story short, Reed is probably the best bet of the bunch to lead the team in receiving, but I am less convinced of that than I am of players like Zay Flowers, Christian Kirk, Mari Cooper, George Pickens, Terry McLaurin, and Keenan Allen doing likewise. What are your thoughts about Jayden Reed?
I can't disagree with you. I'm going to talk a little bit about Christian Watson in a bit. That's a lot of mouths to feed, not to mention Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, right, at tight end. They're not going to run 4 wide receiver sets. They're not going to run empty backfields with 1 tight end. So something's right. Somebody's has got to go. I don't know. Like something's not going to work. One of these guys has to disappoint, but only if our expectation is too high. I don't know if being wide receiver 34. I mean, if Jordan Love is going to be as good as we think Jordan Love is going to be, and I'm not saying I'm on board with that, but the consensus is that he performed at such a level that he is now in a different tier of QBs. Won't somebody have to be at least a wide receiver 3? I just don't know who it's going to be. So, Do I like Jayden Reed? Yeah. Will I be a lot more comfortable after like week 3 where I see how everybody's getting used? Yeah. I'll definitely be more comfortable at that point.
Well, I'm looking at this list of 12 we got here. And again, I think I've said it a couple times already. Like the guy, I'm drafting Chris Godwin over him easily. I'm drafting Ridley over him easily. I would probably go with Allen and McLaurin a full round, if not 2 rounds ahead of him. And I mean, it's Reed strikes me as one of those guys whose consistency will probably put him in the 5th or 6th round area, which again, we're kind of splitting hairs to a point here, but Reed is somebody I want after I have 2 solid receivers, 2 solid running backs. I don't want to have to count on him being the difference maker with somebody else. If somebody goes zero running back and has we talked about like DJ Moore was in the early bunch. DJ Moore is his wide receiver 3. I don't want to have Jayden Reed go against DJ Moore in that battle for wide receiver 3. I want him being a flex, that type of thing. So,
Jayden Reed's not a set it and forget it guy.
No.
You don't just leave him in your lineup from week to week. You're looking at that name each week and going, can I trust him this week?
Yeah. And there'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks where he will smash and you will go on your X account and the people and his lovers and the people that love him will talk about how I told you. But
no, and listen, and it's not like they don't give him the ball. Like they throw him the ball, he gets carries. Like he does a lot, but again, it'll be interesting to see what happens this year.
All right, JJ, let's put a bow on this puppy. Who are we passing on at wide receiver 3?
All right, bow on a puppy. I am in. Now, I seem to have a pattern developing where I smash on vets and I pass on the younger players. I am a little wary of the situation in Houston. They had a meteoric rise last year. And I wonder if they're going to be able to maintain that level of success. Was everybody just surprised? Or is that going to carry over into year 2 of the Ryans administration in Houston? They did add Stephon Diggs. You may have heard of him to their wide receiver core. They added Joe Mixon. But can Stroud support 3 wide receivers and a top flight tight end? I don't know. They're all going to be on the field a ton. Last year, Bobby Slowick ran 11 personnel over 60% of the time. If you don't know, 11 personnel is 3 wide receivers and 1 tight end. But I think all the weapons are going to have their targets watered down this season.
Yeah.
Decreased volume equals decreased production. I also, and I know this is like an old guy thing, I want to see him stay on the field for a full season before I assume he's going to be healthy for a full year. We know he's diminutive. Now, we're in a new NFL, and tiny wide receivers are seemingly popping out of the cracks in the sidewalk, probably because they can hide in there. He's 5'10", 165 pounds. He's small. So hopefully this year, they're not going to use him to block inside on goal line runs. Maybe let him stay outside where it's a little safer. But the fact that he got in there with his tenacity shows how tough he is. So, yeah, I'm passing on Tank Dell. But like you said, there's a lot of guys in here who it made it hard to decide who I'm passing on.
Yeah.
What do you think about Dell?
Again, I think you've been on fire tonight with your picks and your reasoning. I think it's going to be one of those situations in Houston where I'll tell you this. I had to make a choice between in Dynasty if I was going to trade Stephon Diggs or Cooper Kupp. And part of what helped my decision was I had Cooper Kupp on 2 teams, and so I parted with Kupp and kept Diggs to balance out my portfolio, so to speak. But I think Diggs is, despite the contract that Nico Collins just got, I think Diggs is still the alpha, or at least the target leader there. Nico Collins, I think, is going to be Nico Collins now for the next few years. I don't think you can draw me a likely scenario in which Diggs doesn't have 100 plus, maybe like 120 targets. Collins doesn't get the majority of red zone looks and or contested catches. We're talking about an offense that's going to have to throw 600 plus times to get Dell the kind of volume that he may need to be a consistent wide receiver 3, much less a high end one. And we got him at wide receiver 26 here at the end of the 3rd round. I don't see. There's going to be weeks where he lives up to wide receiver to this ADP of wide receiver 36, but I don't see a way that he is a third round receiver. I don't. So yeah, I'm on board. I'm on board with that selection. He would have probably been certainly of those 6 receivers, those first 6 receivers that we see here on Flowers, Dell, Pickens, Kirk, Cooper, and Higgins. He's easily the pass of that bunch, and I like the selection there, Jay.
All right, Doug. So looking at the best of the rest, right? If you're watching on YouTube, you clearly see I listed the next 20 wide receivers. If you're listening, I'm not going to read them all because you'll get bored and forget who I mentioned halfway through. But Doug, of the rest of these guys, all right, this next group of 20, who do you think has the best chance of ending up as a wide receiver 3?
I have a feeling I'm going to steal your guy here, but there's one guy that sticks out.
You can steal my sunshine, baby.
There's one guy that sticks out of this bunch, and it's Diontae Johnson. I don't think there's any chance he's wide receiver 43. I would easily take him over Hollywood Brown in the previous group. I would take him over Tank Dell. Last year, David Montgomery was probably the guy I was most heavily invested in. If Diontae Johnson's at the end of the 6th round, I'm probably going to have him on half my teams like I had David Montgomery, and he's going to be my wide receiver 3, and I'm going to expect him to perform like a wide receiver 2. That's how much confidence I have in him. He's a man on a mission. You can tell it by some of the things that he's saying already, but I don't get caught up too much in that so much as I get caught up in, well, look what Dave Canales did for Mike Evans last year. Mike Canales identified Mike Evans as his guy, and lo and behold, Mike Evans exploded. Yep. Canales is going to mean good things for Bryce Young, and if we got a Bryce Young that's performing at a decent level, lo and behold, I think his wide receiver 1 is probably going to perform at a decent level as well. So Diontae Johnson's the easiest pick here, but there are some other guys I do like here. Ladd McConkey is one. I think DeAndre Hopkins, Brian Thomas, Christian Watson. Oh, geez, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Yeah, these are all guys I would love to have as my flexes.
Yeah, this is one of the major issues with this part of the draft is that there are so many wide receivers who fit into that, right? That last screen we looked at, that wide receiver, that 3rd round of wide receivers. For me, Christian Watson, like we talked about before, if his hamstrings are now closer to being balanced, I'd never heard about that sort of imbalance before. That was kind of crazy to me. But man, he does have the physical skills outside of injury to really dominate. Another guy, Curtis Samuel in Buffalo. I mean, if Josh Allen is going to be a wide receiver 1, he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. And who's he throwing to? I mean, Keon Coleman, he's a rookie, right? They brought Curtis Samuel there for a reason. And I have dynasty eyes too, so I understand. Maybe I'm just still locked in on what he could have been, and he's a hybrid player. And, I fell into that a few years ago with a bunch of those young hybrid guys coming out. But I think Curtis Samuel might have a surprisingly good year with the Bills. Any thoughts on Curtis? I'm way off, aren't I?
I think Samuel is going to be what he has been. I think he'll outperform wide receiver 51, but I don't think significantly so. It does help that he's going to the same play caller or the same. It does help that he's going to a familiar, shall we say, coaching staff that knows. I'm thinking of Joe Brady. I'm sorry. Joe Brady did oversee his best year as a pro. I think that will help him. But yeah, he's someone, and you're going to get him as a flex. I mean, as a wide receiver 51, I think he'll be more than fine as a flex. I think Shakir is probably the one the pick of the Buffalo receivers.
Yep.
For this year. But I also don't think we got a 1,000-yard receiver in that bunch. I think it's going to be a lot of 600 to 800-yard guys with 4 to 6 touchdowns, and but that doesn't mean What's funny is we've talked about guys with this kind of skill set already. Deebo Samuel, Jayden Reed. Samuel is cut from that same kind of cloth in terms of giving you anywhere from 10 to 30 rushing attempts. And then the thing is, Samuel will probably see less volume than those other guys. But when you have a receiver counting on running what would be typically running back work to bump up his value, that's great. That's great when you already have 120 target upside, but I don't think that's what Samuel has. I've rambled on enough about Samuel also.
We probably talk more about Curtis Samuel than any other pod. So you're right. We should be done with him. So to finish up, we're not just a bunch of pretty faces here at IDP Plus. We have an entire suite of tools, rankings, offense, defense, injury trackers, snap count tools, everything on the site. Get your first month for just $1 with the promo code MOCKDRAFT. Head over to idpguys.org after the show. Get ahead of your lazy league mates. Start your march towards fantasy football greatness. And remember, use the promo code MOCKDRAFT. The link and details are in the show description below. Doug, it is time for us to say goodbye. Let the people know where they can find us and any final thoughts.
You see the Twitter handle? I won't spell it out for you. I'm hoping that you all can read here at this point. I did tease it earlier, and I said I was going to mention it later. So here, later is now. Does that make sense? Later is now.
Later is now.
Sweet. All right. So, but yeah, my first article of the off season dropped today. It has to do with analyzing, looking back at last year's offensive line play and projecting ahead to this year, how that's going to. We won't get into how it affects the player from each team, the fantasy players from each team, but we have to set the groundwork for each team. And the way I go about it is starting with the offensive line play and trying to figure out who's got a good offensive line and who doesn't, run blocking, pass blocking, whatnot. So I did the AFC this week. NFC's coming next week, and at the end of next week's article, we'll list. I'll list the teams 1 through 32 in terms of run blocking, pass blocking in total. And why do that, JJ? Because it helps us identify. It was easy for me to see, for example, Tennessee had a bad offensive line last year, so I was going to be lower on Derrick Henry than most. Was I right? I mean, he was still good, but he wasn't Derrick Henry in the past. Why is that? Because he didn't have squat blocking for him. So even the Derrick Henrys of the world aren't going to explode if they don't have proper, if the guys in front of him can't open up lanes. So that's where I'm at right now. Hopefully in the next couple weeks, we'll see. I still have to send in my write up in my video to player profiler for Zamir White. And that's what I can think of off the top of my head. What you got, JJ?
I'm at JJ Wenner on Twitter. Thank you to Doug for all of his work on this week's pod. Special thank you to the whole crew at IDP Plus, as always. You can catch me on the Rider Dynasty podcast this Friday with Jameson and Joe. We're going to break down some wide receiver tiers, figure out who fits where. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday when Doug and I play our last round of Smash or Pass, this time with running backs. So thank you for tuning in. And remember, when in doubt, go all out. Boat drinks, my friends. Boat drinks.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.